right, peace to everybody tuning in. All glory, all honor, all praise is due to the Most High God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, in the name of his only begotten Son, our Messiah. And this is another follow-up video to the Pentecost and the Sabbath count video. And I just want to make something clear, and I want to say something before I begin. This is not an attack. This is not a bashing. This is not anything of that nature for those who do keep the Sabbath once a month. All right, just want to make that clear because I too was one of those people. So I'm not bashing, I'm not attacking, I'm just trying to shed light and trying to show people that, hey, this is off. You know, we're in a time where we have access to so much information. And like our brother Paul said, we have to prove all things, right? So we got to look into the scriptures. We got to look into secondary sources. We got to make sense of this once a month doctrine. And I understand that the calendar itself will not get you into the kingdom of God. I know that. But we have to understand that where we can do better, we should do better. Where there's new information presented to us to say, hey, we got something wrong, the first step should not be to ignore it if we haven't done the research ourselves. So what we should be doing and how we should approach this is letting go of the ego, letting go of the pride, letting go of the biases, and really open our minds and try to seek out the truth of the matter. And like I said, I too was once keeping Sabbath once a month. And this is because I relied on the leaders of the congregation to show me and to tell me what it was and tell me about the scriptures, as opposed to me seeking out the matter myself, as opposed to me using the spirit that the Most High gave to me to seek out his word and to use discernment. The scripture says, seek and ye shall find, knock and the door shall be opened. So again, this is not a personal attack. This is not a bashing fest. This is just shedding light and letting people know, hey, we have to do our due diligence and trying to find the truth of the matter. All right. So we're going to get into this article here. And this article is called Reclaiming the Sabbath. This was put out sometime in 2015. I think it might have been August or July, sometime around there. And within this article, there are certain supporting references, secular references, that are used to support this once a month Sabbath doctrine. And we're going to examine these references and see if these references do support the idea of once a month Sabbath. So the first reference I see here on the article is the works of Philo, the Decalogue, right? And it's a little funny because I'm hearing folks have an issue with me using secondary sources like Philo and Josephus, but forget that the same article they put out to support a once a month Sabbath doctrine uses Philo as a source. So I find that a little funny, but that's okay. We're going to look into what Philo said, and we're going to see if this does support once a month Sabbath. Let's read what it says. The fourth commandment has reference to the sacred seventh day, that it may be passed in a sacred and holy manner. Now, some states keep the holy festival only once in the month, counting from the new moon as a day sacred to God. But the nation of the Jews keep every seventh day regularly after each interval of 6 days. So let's examine what we just read. Philo says, now some states keep the holy festival once in the month. Some states, counting from the new moon. But this is the separating factor. He says, but the nation of the Jews, he makes a separation. The nation of the Jews keep every seventh day regularly after each interval of 6 days. So this statement in itself does not support a once a month Sabbath. So what we got to understand about Philo is that Philo was a Hellenistic Jew. He was a Jew that was highly influenced by Greeks. So a lot of his thinking and a lot of his writings were trying to blend Greek philosophy and Israelite culture. He wasn't on one side of the fence. A Hellenistic Jew was an ancient Jewish person who embraced Greek language, philosophy, and cultural customs while maintaining their Jewish religion identity. This is what you would call lukewarm. Philo was lukewarm. So let's look up when Philo existed. This is a quick Google search. Philo of Alexandria existed during the 1st century, living from approximately 20 BCE to 50 CE. So he lived in a time where Jews were surrounded by Gentiles, Greeks, Romans, so forth, right? We were surrounded by that. So when he says some states, I had to look into this and see what exactly is Philo referencing here. Some states keep the holy festival only once in a month. He basically here is trying to say, hey, well, we're all doing the same thing, but it's just some people are keeping Sabbath once a month and some people are keeping Sabbath every 7 days. So now we got to look and see, okay, what is Philo talking about here? And when I looked this up, something interesting came up. Now, like I said before, we were surrounded by Gentiles. Now, this is what I found about what the Gentiles were doing. The day of this deity, Apollo, his birth, was believed to have been the 7th of the month, whence he is called Hebdommagenes. I'm not even sure if I pronounced that right, but let's see what that word means. All right, so it's from ancient Greek. It's given to the Greek god Apollo, which translates to 7th born or belonging to the 7th. Interesting. According to some traditions, he was a 7-month child. The number 7 was sacred to the god. On the 7th of every month, sacrifices were offered to him, and his festivals usually fell on the 7th of a month. This is interesting. Philo said that there are some states that keep the sacred day the 7th of the month only. This is not the sacred day because this is not the Sabbath day. But he's trying to make it seem as if, some people are keeping the Sabbath day, but they're just doing it in their own way. No, it's not the Sabbath day. They're doing something completely different. So we can see that the Greeks, the Gentiles, were doing this. And that's why Philo said, but the Jews, he made a separation, but the Jews do it every 7th day after each interval of 6 days. So that reference from Philo from the Decalogue doesn't support once a month Sabbath. All it does is shed light on what the Gentiles were doing and what the Jews were actually doing. Here's another thing that came up in my research. The 7 Against Thebes. The 7 Against Thebes is the 3rd play in an Oedipus, if I said that right, themed trilogy produced by, I don't even know how to pronounce this, I'm not even going to attempt, in 467 BC. This was a play about Greek mythology. All right, so let's see what is said in this. A victory assured, but at the 7th, the god that on the 7th day was born, royal Apollo, hath taken up his rest. Interesting. So we got another Greek source here that's saying that this deity was born on the 7th day. And I want to make something clear. I am not denouncing the importance of the number 7. I am not denouncing the sacred number 7 at all. We know that the Most High works in 7s. That's his number. We know that. What I'm denouncing is this once a month practice, because this is what Philo was talking about. We also got to take into consideration that there are ancient nations that knew about the cycle of 7s, right? Like we had the Babylonians, we had the Egyptians. Like the cycle of 7 is not something that was exclusive knowledge to Israel. Nations knew about this. And what was done is this knowledge was polluted. Man polluted this knowledge and started using it for their deities, their false gods, their idol worship, so on and so forth, and started developing their own style of worship around the sacred number 7, or their own culture, or whatever you want to call it. They polluted it. So again, I'm not denouncing the importance of 7. I'm just denouncing this practice. This is not what the Jews were doing. Then I came across Another reference, his name is Herodotus. He was a Greek historian famous for his work Histories. All right, so he's some Greek historian. He was called the father of history by the Roman writer Cicero, who admired him. But anyways, this is who he was. So according to one of his writings, let's see what he says. And this is chapter 57 or section 57, however you want to look at it. And let's see what he says. Such are their rights in war. In peace, the powers given them are according as I shall now show. At all public sacrifices, the kings shall be first to sit down to the banquet and shall be the first served, each of them receiving a portion double of what is given to the rest of the company. Theirs shall be the first libations, and theirs the hides of the sacrifice beast. At each new moon and each seventh day of the first part of the month, there shall be given to them of each of the public store a full-grown victim for Apollo, this deity, his temple. So we got another source, another Greek source saying that each new moon and each seventh day of the month, there were sacrifices done to this deity, Apollo. So now I can see why Philo was saying some people keep the sacred day, the seventh day of the month only. He's trying to say that's the Sabbath day, but it's not the Sabbath day. Then he goes on to say, but the Jews keep it every seventh day after each interval of 6 days. So now I'm seeing what Philo was referring to. This is what he's referring to in regards of what the other states, the other surrounding parties were doing. But the Jews weren't doing this. All right, now back to this article. Yeah, I wouldn't accept this quote from Philo as supporting evidence or supporting references, whatever you want to say that the Sabbath is only once a month. This is not even saying that at all. And we just went through it. He puts a clear separation between the Jews and the others that were surrounding the Jews. Now let's actually go look at the Decalogue and see what else is being said in this exact writing. So here we are, the works of Philo, the Decalogue, and you can actually find this writing online. You can find it on earlychristianwritings.com. All right. So let's go and let's find the quote first. So I'm just going to search it up because it's a lot of writing here. So it's in section XX, I believe that's 20, verse 96, where Philo made that comment that some states keep it once a month. Now, what I found funny was in this exact same writing that's being quoted to support a once a month Sabbath, when you scroll down and you read even more, I believe it's in section 30. This is what is said. Verse 161. But to the seventh day of the week, he has assigned the greatest festivals, those of the longest duration, at the periods of the equinox, both vernal and autumnal in each year, appointing 2 festivals for these 2 epochs, each lasting 7 days. The one which takes place in the spring being for the perfection of what is being sown, and the one which falls in autumn being a feast of thanksgiving for the bringing home of all the fruits which the trees have produced. He's talking about the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the Feast of Tabernacles, right? And it's funny because he says to the 7th day of the week, he has assigned the greatest festivals. So we know that the Feast of Unleavened Bread starts on the 15th of Abib, and we know that the Feast of Tabernacles falls on the 15th of Ethanim, right? So he's saying both of those feasts fall on the 7th day of the week. So let's take our attention here really quick. And I know we're drifting off to the side, but I'm going to bring it back. I just want to state this really quick. Now, if you saw the Pentecost and the Sabbath count video, I presented this count, this chart here. And, I said what I said about it. But it's funny because it's lining up exactly with what Philo was saying. He said the 7th day of the week is assigned the 2 greatest and longest festivals, which is day 15 of the month. This is why I stated that day 16 is the first day of the week. So if day 15 is the 7th day of the week, let's do a quick count. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The 9th day of the month now becomes the first day of the week. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now the second day becomes the first day of the week. Now I know this is a quick sidetrack, but I wanted to make note of this because in this doctrine, the once a month Sabbath doctrine, they teach that the new moon is the first day of the week. So if we do the math, the first day of the week, day 7 would be the 7th day of the week. Then day 14 would be the 7th day of the week. But Philo, the same person that's being quoted to support a once a month Sabbath in that article, is saying that the 15th of the month is the 7th day of the week. So why is he not being referred to when it comes to that? This is also why in the book of John, the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread was called a high Sabbath. It was already a Sabbath. But there's a feast day on the Sabbath, so now it's a high Sabbath. So again, this is the same writing, the same Decalogue, just 10 sections down. Why did the reading stop at section 20? The once a month Sabbath doctrine also teaches that Pentecost is the 7th Sabbath of the year, which essentially is the Sabbath of the 5th month. The last video I put out gets into all that. But anyways, so in section 30, the same section, right before he gets into the 7th day of the week being the two greatest festivals, he says, and the day of Pentecost, which is numbered from this day, he's talking about the sheaf wave day, numbered from this day by 7 portions of 7 days, in which it is the custom to offer up loaves, which are called the loaves of the first fruit. Okay, so in that same writing, he's saying that Pentecost is 7 portions of 7 days. That's 49 days. That's 7 weeks. I spoke about this count in the initial Pentecost and Sabbath count video. So in the same writing that's being used to support a monthly Sabbath, which is an incorrect use of it, that same writing is stating that Pentecost is 7 portions of 7 days. So why are the people who are supporting the once a month Sabbath doctrine not referring to other parts in Philo's writing where he goes against some of the other teachings that are being associated with the once a month Sabbath doctrine? The same writing, the same Decalogue writing, just a few sections down. Now another writing of Philo, the Special Laws 2, this is the same writing that I quoted in the initial video. It says here that the sheaf wave follows the first day of the Passover feast. So why is Philo not being quoted for this? So again, like I said, this whole quote here from Philo, this is no good. We can't use this. So let's go on to the next reference, Shinto and the 7th day Sabbath. All right, and this is what it said. The Jewish people seem to have celebrated the Sabbath once a month in the early days of Isaiah and Hosea. Where's the facts for this? We know that the ancient Israelites were celebrating the Feast of Weeks, and I already proved multiple times that the Feast of Weeks cannot be properly calculated with a once a month Sabbath. So how exactly does this author come to the conclusion that this is what the Jews were doing? This is a theory, not fact. All right, let's see what it says. It says, the Israelites gradually substituted a weekly Sabbath in the place of a monthly ceremony. Again, where is the facts? The facts don't show this. This is a theory. So I looked into this. This is a Japanese source, and it's a rather recent practice or custom or religion, whatever you want to call it. It says the Umoto's first monthly ceremony was performed in 1894, 2 years after the founding of the religion. This is more of a recent religion. So how is a Japanese source, which is rather recent at that, be used to prove ancient Israelite practice? Umoto, also known as Imoto Kyo, is a Shinto-based Japanese new religion founded in the 1890s. Again, like I said, this is recent and this has no connection to Israelite culture. So this source, Shinto and the Sabbath day, respectfully, we can't accept this. And we're going to take a look at one final reference, the KJV. We're going to look at Ezekiel 45, 7 to 25. Let's take a look real quick. And I think this is the focal point here. Verse 18, thus saith the Lord God, in the first month, in the first day of the month, so that's new moon, thou shalt take a young bullock without blemish and cleanse the sanctuary. And then it goes down, verse 20, and so thou shalt do the seventh day of the month for every one that erreth, and for him that is simple, so shall you reconcile the house. So this is not saying explicitly that the Sabbath is the seventh day of the month. This is just saying to repeat the same procedure that was done on the new moon, but this is not saying that it's the Sabbath. Now, the only place that says explicitly this is the Sabbath day and we can actually put a number to it was in Exodus 16, where we know that the 15th day of the month is when God spoke to Moses and told him that tomorrow manna will start raining down and to gather it for 6 days. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then after that would be the Sabbath. We can actually pinpoint a day of the month that actually says it is a Sabbath. So this day 22 would have to be answered for if the claim is that the Sabbath is only the seventh day of the month. And then we have this account here in the days of Hezekiah when the sanctifying began on the new moon and then they came to the porch on the 8th day of the month. Let's read it really quick. Now they began on the first day of the month to sanctify, and on the 8th day of the month came they to the porch of the Lord. They started to sanctify on the first day, the new moon, and then presented themselves on the 8th day of the month. Why not the 7th day of the month? So something like this, an answer has to be given as to why they didn't come on the 7th day of the month, but rather the 8th day of the month. If the 7th day of the month is the Sabbath, why didn't they come on the 7th day of the month? So again, back to Ezekiel 45 and 20, the best conclusion I can come to in regards to this is this was a prep day. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into all the other references in this video, but I do encourage you to go and take a look and read them for yourself. But here in the red, I just kind of summed up what these references are talking about. So this Charles J. Hefele is talking about Sunday versus Saturday worship. Kenneth Albert Strand is talking about Sunday worship. Letters by Louis Finkelstein is talking about Hillel II and his astronomical calculations. Then Shaf P. This is talking about Sunday worship. And the Universal Jewish Encyclopedia. This is talking about the connection between new moon and Sabbath days. All right. So we are in the age of information. We got to look into all things. We got to prove all things. All right. And I do encourage everybody to do their research. Look into things. If you don't get the answer right away, pray about it, fast about it, go to the Father about it. And in his due time, he'll answer it. All right. Now, with that being said, peace and blessings, and may the Most High be with you.